Hey guys, welcome back to another 10X podcast. We're happy to be here and happy to see you guys tuning in once again. Our goal of which, as it has been for the past few weeks, is to continue to take long format podcasts that explain things relative to us and to the gym and break that down, make it a little more understandable maybe for you as members. Condense it to where it doesn't take up a huge chunk of your day. So here we are. Thank you for tuning into our previous ones. I think we have a record, right, for our last one? How many views?
Almost 500 viewers. Looking at sponsorships now. I think there's a gas station down the street that wants us to sponsor Squat and Go.
Yep, and a couple obvious things here too. With that, we wanted to do our best to provide a better sound experience for you. So here we are, taking the next step in the podcasting world with some microphones and a soundboard. So hopefully better audio for you. You might hear some cool sounds throughout that add a little flair, add a little flair and maybe a little humor to it. So here we are. Also, if you've been tuning into the past few, you've been on the tour of Taryn's house. Here you are in your third stop. This is a front porch view. So hopefully you enjoy this one. Well, at least viewing back towards the house.
We have a nice view.
So with that said, we'll go ahead and dive into a few gym announcements, cover anything gym related, and then work towards the actual goal of the podcast, which is going to be to explain and unpack an interview that Andrew Huberman just went on with Dr. Stacy Sims, which is an exercise scientist and nutrition expert. And she kind of dedicated most of her effort and attention towards women's performance and women's health. So our goal today is to unpack that, make it a little more digestible for you, and maybe give you a few nuggets to take away as always.
Yeah, if you want to skip directly to that, click on this timestamp and you can go there.
Perfect. A couple things gym related. We are finishing up. It's now recording. It's Saturday here. Justin just wrapped up his final workout for the quarter. So if you've enjoyed programming thus far, it's this guy. So give him a little round of applause and a pat on the back.
If you didn't like it, it was this guy.
We're moving towards Steve. And I'm sure you'll like his touch and flair too. Jay, you want to speak on any of that programming?
No, I've had fun. It's been a good, fun quarter for me to just try some new stuff. We ended with a 45-minute sandbag bear hug carry. So that was a little bit longer. Not my wheelhouse, but good stuff to do. And excited to get Steve's. We already went over the first week, which y'all be going over when we covered this. And or we covered this while y'all be watching this. So it'll be a good week. Excited for it. Steve's going to be lifting heavy. What are we going to be doing, Steven?
Bench press 3 times a week. No, hopefully. Yeah, we'll be doing wall balls. Ramey, right?
Yeah.
Ramey, you're welcome. Wall balls are coming your way. And anyways, it's super exciting. I like programming as well. And so hopefully it'll be really cool, strange amalgam of flavors and not something really boring. And trying to shake the cobwebs of the first week, I told you guys, was tough. But hope you guys like it, and hopefully it'll just grow and blossom and continue to get better for you. But that's it.
Cool. Outside of that, any other announcements, KG? How are you, man? Good?
Well, yeah, no other announcements I can think of. We just wrapped up our fall crew, hoodless.
Yeah.
Ichabod Crane, headless, hoodless. Unless I'm missing something. I don't think there's anything else to mention. Hats off to Jay for a solid quarter, and I look forward to Steve and what he has to offer with his unique take on training as well.
Yeah, we are coming off of a big storm that just pushed through. Hopefully all you all are safe and happy and healthy, and all things around the house are still in somewhat good order. Be thinking about the ones that aren't.
Yeah.
A lot of rough stuff kind of happened in the area.
Yeah.
It definitely bit us pretty hard all around us and in between us in Morristown and Bristol. So.
Yeah, Newport, Del Rio. Yeah.
North Carolina as well.
North Carolina.
got
Damascus.
Yeah, Damascus, Virginia, Unicor right up the road here too. I mean, yeah, we were anywhere that a big river came through, it seemed like was kind of in rough spots. But
Yeah.
thinking about those folks for sure. And again, hopefully you all are all good and all healthy. So. Anywho, let's dig in. What do you think? Let's start talking about this. So again, just a little review. Andrew Huberman, podcast you've probably heard us mention before. Definitely picked his brain or picked some of his ideas in the cold water exposure and sauna world. He had a guest on recently, and shout out to Jen Hamer for sending us this link and putting us onto the trail of this one. But again, her name is Stacy Sims. She's a PhD. And again, in exercise science, big focus in nutrition and women's performance. And really what we thought to be most relatable to our gym folks is going to be how women training protocols are maybe a little adjusted away from men's, and how their nutrition should look, and how it maybe is a bit different than men around training and such. So we're going to probably for the next 30, 45 minutes unpack some of the notes we'll have. So you'll see us pull phones up and just reference back to some information we've taken down and go from there. But vote we kick off with women and training protocols and kind of some recommendations maybe as women age or as they're in their youthful years. So who wants to dive right into
Maybe
that?
as a disclaimer, we should state the obvious that we are 4 red-blooded males who are absorbing and then doing our best to filter prevalent, useful information as we see it to those of you who are kind enough to lend us your ears. So this is not necessarily a reflection of everything we believe in. This is us essentially boiling down to 2.5 hours of information into what were the high points for us. So maybe we need to start with that as a full note of disclosure. And then I think she is super impressive. It was my first exposure to her and all of her detailed understanding of the female body and the way it responds to training and nutrition and hormones. And she went tit for tat with Huberman on brain science too. So she's certainly a font of information that wells out and over. And maybe I shouldn't use a water reference right now, but that's how it struck me as very interesting. And some stuff confirmed the bias that Justin and I have seen and Steve and Taryn have seen over the years, and some stuff struck me as totally counter to what I would have thought as well. And I suppose that'll be the same for most of you ladies who are listening, and fellas for that matter.
Yeah. Maybe we dive right into an idea that we've always believed in as a gym, male, female. And that's just based on a lot of training around resistance training, strength training, performing heavy lifts all through stages of life. You want to dig into that, Jay?
Yeah, so they basically she brought up the fact that women have more oxidative fibers, which is lends women to tend their performance, I'd say, more equipped for longer endurance type stuff like that. So aerobic training, higher reps, lighter weight. But for longevity, what women really need to do is some more high intensity interval training, more resistance training, and more sprint work, which is kind of, like we said, turns the whole programming, I would say, scheme on its head from what outside of our gym you would see. We want you all to lift heavy. We want you to run fast, go fast, and do some interval work. And we preach that, and it's good to hear her say that from what she's seen in her practice and helping people perform at high levels. She did say, she's like, most training outside of longevity is just for looking good, and she wants to make it to where you can live to your 80 and 90 and still have an amazing quality of life, take care of your family, and enjoy those last years of your life instead of sitting in a hospital bed. So really, really cool. That's kind of a broad, I would say, encompass of what she was talking about. We can kind of break that down if you want, whether it be talking about resistance training, talking about high-intensity interval training, or talking about sprint training from what we've seen.
Yeah, and one thing maybe we go ahead and get out ahead of, obviously, all movement is good. You don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater. If you enjoy going on long runs and doing the Orange Theory-esque type approach to working out, anything's better than nothing. But as Justin said, her entire goal was to optimize women's number one performance in the world that she lives in, and number two, how can she get ladies later in life or through all stages of life to live the best quality of life, maintain strength and form, and make sure the metabolic flexibility and things are dialed in. So that's where she's really working on incorporating those at least 2 to 3 days worth of resistance training, which is things we normally boxes we normally try to check throughout our programming weeks in the gym. But also, as Justin said, 2 to 3 more days in the gym of the high intensity type approach. She even advocated, she said she enjoyed her long ocean swims and gravel bike rides. Yep. So she's not doing those things. She's just talking about optimizing hormone levels and being able to maintain strength how important it is to make sure you're incorporating the resistance training stuff. So that's kind of our protocol, right? 2 to 3 times of the high intensity and 2 to 3 times of the heavy resistance training per week.
Yeah, and she even segmented her suggestions based on state in life or age in life as to the most beneficial route or routes to follow training wise. So younger females, I think she said 20 to 30,
Yes.
do better with higher volume, more hypertrophy, and just essentially learning compound movements. And then what was counter to what we understood, man, I think
That
just
bees,
done
yeah,
shit out
bees.
of me. What was counter to that what we understood was
You
that
own that. You
later in life, strength prioritization and sprint prioritization, the polarization, I think was the term she used, becomes that much more important, because not only is it beneficial for hormonal balancing throughout the day, but it also, the way I understood it, and again, speaking as a man, better prepares females for menopause, perimenopause, because of the exposure to the really hard neuroendocrine type response from training. So it was super interesting, very much a confirmation of a lot of things, but then the type of training at the life cycle with which ladies are in was a little surprising to me.
Yeah. Yeah. She mentioned during that perimenopause, and this is me not having a great understanding of it, but me just trying to latch on to some of the themes. During those perimenopause stages of life, estrogen levels start to drop, which makes it harder for women to hold on to lean mass. That's why she found it to be so important to find a way to hold on / build that tissue. Thus the reason she was recommending those heavier weight training sessions later in life or closer towards that stage of life. Because the body naturally was able to utilize that hormone and hold on to it, much like testosterone in us. But she said you can hack that, if you will, or work through that by maintaining those 2 to 3 sessions of resistance training per week.
Yeah, what I thought was really cool was the specificity of the language she was using, especially when it came down to, we always talk to you guys about RPE, and I know that you guys are a lot like me. Sometimes RPE, it takes a back seat to what you want to do, whereas she was mentioning RPE the way we use it is usually through intensity, and the way that she was describing it was not only intensity, but it was based upon how much gas you have left in the tank, so to speak, in the form of reps, especially with the weight training. And she was mentioning a 7 out of 10 would be I have 3 left in the tank, so to speak, if I were doing a set of 10. So a lot of us, we kind of ramp up too high when we should be backing off a little bit. And when it comes to those stages in life for women that she's referring to in particular, it's more of a detriment than it is a help at that point. And I'd say for most of us, it's kind of a detriment if we're always cranking up to 10 all the time. If it's not anything to do with menopausal or perimenopausal, it would be, I think, adrenal glands would be the other thing to be attacked, especially if we're bringing men back into the conversation as well. And so I thought she did a great job of kind of pinpointing those different stages of life, not only from an athletic standpoint, because she's working with some of the best female athletes in the world as well, but the age. And then, of course, I think she even mentioned sometimes or a little bit about the amount of training someone's had as well. So I thought she did a really good job there.
Training age is something that I don't know if she mentioned directly, but we try to take into account at times. And I know one of her suggestions to onboard new people and teach them strength training movement, she said it could take anywhere from 2 weeks to 4 months. So I thought that was such a broad range, but I think that probably, she didn't say it verbatim, but would mean based on the individual's training age. It might take 2 weeks to start training again, but if you don't have those formative years in your youth, learning compound movements and accumulating the volume, it might take up to 4 months before you can safely back squat or something of that nature.
Well, and another
intensity,
thing,
I should say.
Yeah, another thing I always think about is if you go to CrossFit gyms, all across the country, or even in our state, you see people just hammering themselves over and over on repeat, and we put those RPEs in our training for that particular purpose. If you're feeling beat up all the time, it's because you may not be following the particular RPE that we're putting out. So know that that's there for a reason, and that we put some thought into our training as well. We don't want you coming to us saying, I'm beat down, I'm broken.
You make a good point.
Yeah.
How does one establish what their RPE is without understanding what 10 is?
Sure.
Right.
Yeah.
And she makes the point that most folks, and she kind of harps on what is it, Orange Theory and the other similar type
F45.
structures
F45.
that people leave winded, soaking wet, sweaty, but they're doing themselves a disservice because they're not strong enough to maintain any modicum of intensity across 40 minutes, and they're in fact impairing their hormonal response to all the exercise and weight loss that they're truly after.
And they never train it.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah, and associating sweat with
Equity.
a quality workout isn't necessarily the case.
Right.
You know, and that's why it's hard for some folks, speaking to the RPE, to keep the reins pulled back or to finish the day with stuff left in the tank because they feel like that wasn't adequate.
Yeah, you would be surprised, what you would be able to gain by leaving the gym thinking you had a little bit left than leaving the gym thinking you have nothing left.
Right.
So,
And that's why we also do different pathways that we train. We're talking about resistive training. I put in the coach's notes, sometimes I have FOS for phosphagen or glycolytic or oxidative because we want to train. Even though it's a 5-minute workout, we want really intensity. Some people kind of balk at those. They're like, man, I'm only working out for 5 minutes. But if you work out for 5 minutes like you're supposed to, if you truly know, as Galen said, intensity, that 5 minutes, I think, feels way worse after that 5 minutes than that 20 or 30-minute MRAP where you're just sweating a lot.
Yeah, and has we've spoke on this, but has probably 5-fold, 10-fold the carryover throughout the rest of your day during the recovery process of that. Those type workouts, those high intensities, just being able to go up and get it.
Yep.
And you have to be strong enough to go get it.
Right.
Which proves her argument for the importance of strength training and development of that,
Right.
probably as king, like
well,
the most
Yeah,
important thing.
strong here, but also here too.
Right,
It's like being able to take yourself there.
well, and the
That's a
third
learning.
aspect we haven't really talked about was the polarization of if you do something for a long period of time, make it super calm and simple.
Easy.
Lower than 120 heart rate. And a lot of people don't know this, but if you're able to stay in that time window, I like to go for longer walks. Me and Emily will go on a longer walk, and you'd be surprised that a lot of people don't understand there are different pathways being used with different types of training. And if you go on those long, slow walks, you're not burning glycogen. You're actually able to target fat in particular. And that's why you see some older people who will go on long walks. They're able to stay leaner, and it has nothing to do with the fact that they're out there just burning glycogen and hitting 100 burpees for time, but that they're actually, able to keep the heart rate down and target fat in particular. And so I always
And
thought that
recover.
and recover.
Which is what she described the pole, one pole being super high intensity, the opposite of that pole being
Right.
low intensity recovery type stuff. And it's exactly what you're saying.
Yep.
Long, easy walks, stuff that you enjoy that's good for your mental health, but doesn't leave you doubled over and winded.
Our Wednesdays and Thursdays that we program, sometimes it's
RPE
RP4 or something like that. People are like, meh.
Yeah, but not to be confused with that being your only method of training.
Yeah.
A lot of people hear what you said. Well, if that burns fat, I want to do that.
Sure.
And then they target that or they go towards that.
Very true.
So it's almost it's like truly utilizing that tool for what it is the recovery day to let you be able to go reach intensity on other days.
It's just, once again, we
Another
use
tool.
a toolkit kind of analogy where you want not just one very well used and worn out tool. You want a belt full of tools that you know when and how to apply them so that you can fix all of life's ills with exercise or as much as you can.
And as Peter Attia talks about, strength and VO2 max is the number one indicators of long-term health. So if you're going for numbers, that is.
Right. And as we talked about recently, the number one way to achieve and improve VO2 max is to train to intensity. High intensity, those 9s of 10s.
I think we've intensely beat this horse.
So guys, if you want some numbers that, like Galen was talking about earlier, 20 to 30-year-olds, what they're looking for is what she recommends is learn how to move well. That's the first thing. CrossFit has a thing, mechanics, consistency, then intensity. Learn how to move well. You can spend more time in the gym, and we want you to move to failure if you're in that younger age. That's going to increase hypertrophy and basically give you that baseline for in your later years. You won't subtract from that muscle mass bank. Also, 2 HIIT sessions and 1 sprint session a week. HIIT is high-intensity interval training. That's something she mentions at near the end of the podcast, like an EMOM or something like that, or some sort of CrossFit. And then 1 sprint session. Galen kind of brought it up. We're having our meeting on Tuesday talking about if you've ever seen us do 5 touch-and-go power cleans and 20-second max effort on the bike after that, and then we have a 6-minute recovery, that's sprint training. That's what you should be doing for women. And like I said, it's completely opposite of what most literature, well, not literature, I won't say literature.
Culture.
There we go.
Culture.
What
Very
did you
good.
say?
And then 3 to 4 resistance training days a week. Well, that's some sort of weightlifting. If you're in the 30 to 40 age bracket, so you're getting closer to, I guess, perimenopause is what that would be. Compound movements, heavier work. So instead of that 8 to 12 rep range of hypertrophy and going to failure, it should be more heavier work, more nervous system training. And intentional bout periodization. It says intentional blocks every 6 weeks, but that's just, we kind of switch with our people and do that. Holy smokes.
Oh, gosh.
Got it.
Get it?
Yep.
Atta boy. And my life safe.
Jeez.
It says build bait to do power-based training as well. So power-based training is kind of what we were talking about, that 40-second time domain, the power cleans, bike sprints, or go run a 200 or 300 meters and then walk a lap because you're going to need it. Run it hard.
Yeah, or find a hill.
Yeah, find a hill. Absolutely miserable stuff, but you should be doing that. 40 to 50. If new to resistance training, it takes, G said, 2 weeks to 4 months to learn how to move well. If you're starting then, minimum of 3 resistance training days per week, 2 sprint intervals, and 1 hit a week. Train heavier, but more reps and reserves. What Steve was talking about, that RIR, reps and reserve, or RPE. So we want you to go heavier with more reps and reserve. Don't take that weight down and think that you're doing something. You want to bank all that strength and muscle mass and keep it as long as possible as you age.
Perfect. So that's probably pretty good protocols and maybe a good little ending place to talk specific about training. The way the podcast opened up, and I think maybe our next direction would be how to optimize recovery and help from a hormone standpoint keep women as lean as possible and as optimally fueled as possible for performance. So maybe we dive into that. She hits it right on the nose, and it's probably going to be a little of a conflicting idea. There's a lot of people that have success in what we're about to talk about as a potential no-no, and just take it into consideration and pick away what you wish. But what she speaks specifically on is how potentially detrimental intermittent fasting can be on active women. And what that is in turn doing to their cortisol levels, which, as we know, are stress hormones in the body, both male and female, and how that tees them up for the lack of proper recovery and therefore the lack of a well-running engine that helps ladies and gentlemen to stay lean. So we can dig into that a little bit more, but the ultimate theme of that is women, when waking up or before a training session, depending on when you go about that, should be properly fueling or at least intaking some protein and some carbohydrate. And the way I understand it, what that essentially is, me personally, when I heard it, my thought process is this isn't going to have enough time to get into the body to actually start fueling this engine. What she speaks on and what I thought to be fascinating is it's just simply a signaling method for the body to know that it's about to go under some stress and it is properly fueled.
Right.
Yeah.
Which is really, really neat. All it is it's like a yeah, you're okay. We know you can do this. You've got a little bit of fuel entering the system versus oh my gosh, we're about to get crushed. We better hold on to everything we have kind of concept. Right. And I thought that to be very, very fascinating.
Yeah, and it was just a little bit of protein, right?
Yeah,
and
15 grams of protein.
If you're doing resistance work,
it could be higher.
And then you complement it with carbohydrate if you're doing conditioning, cardiovascular bouts.
Yeah.
Super interesting to me, and again, flies in the face of probably what I've done for a good long while.
Yeah.
But changed my mind in some ways, and reconsidering my fasted training habits as well.
Galen, it's always worked for me.
Well, here's the thing.
Hold on. There we go.
Wait, no, we got to do this one.
Applause.
Record scratch.
And it might always work for you, and like all things, the only absolute rule in nutrition is that there's no absolute rule in nutrition. You may be a representative of 80% of the community of females or males for that matter who do need to eat, and you never realize it. And you may also be indicative of the 20% who don't. There is no hard and fast rule for anything until you know how your body responds. Now, we're just, again, regurgitating what she says. I thought it was very interesting, and I knew that it would probably step on some toes, and that's okay. If you're not willing to expose yourself to new information, then maybe you're too firmly holding on to the information that you've strangled.
Yeah, and I thought she did a good job of saying, yeah, it may work for you, but what if this would have worked better?
Yeah.
And that's the only way you know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's no way to know unless you treat yourself like N=1. Experiment, hypothesis. Here's the hypothesis. I'll control all my controls, and then here's the variable.
Right.
What are the results?
Yeah, and to come back, what I would say as far as the protein's concerned, if you're going to try a little bit of protein before you work out, we don't mean like, if it were me, I wouldn't choose a solid food. I would do something like a protein shake. It's going to be quicker absorbed. You're already bypassing some of the breakdown you would have to do if you ate a solid food. So that may help you kind of dig into that if you'd like to try it.
Yeah.
And so I know she was mentioning a little bit of, I think, coffee with some almond milk and then protein.
Yep.
Yeah,
It's
that was
good,
her.
right?
That was her specific one. She'd make a double shot espresso the night before. She would add 15 grams of protein powder into it, quality protein powder, leucine-based protein powder, and then on her conditioning days or her cardio days, she would also incorporate a sweetened almond milk.
Yeah,
carbohydrate.
And I
For the
wanted to,
carbohydrate.
I wanted to back up a little bit. We talked about cortisol. Just in case you guys don't know, that's just a stressor. That's a hormone in the body. That's a stressor that can be provoked quite a bit if you do a lot of fasting. And so it's a good thing to have, but you just don't want it in a huge surplus because it could lead to some detrimental effects. So, anyways, I wanted to cover that just to make sure. But
I think the way I understand it is there's a cycle to the release of cortisol, right? It elevates in the morning to wake us up, and then as the day passes, it lowers to allow us to fall back to sleep. And what I think, and you guys correct me if I'm wrong, her suggestion centers on is when you wake in the morning, if you are an exerciser in the morning, it's best to have some sort of sustenance to signal to your brain that we're not in an extended period of stress. It's okay for me to utilize these amino acids essentially, and not sacrifice hard gained lean muscle.
Right.
And that's essentially, that's the way I understood the logic behind eating, or she called it feeding, right? Have a meal before you train.
Yeah.
I wouldn't even call it a meal. It's like you're saying, it could be a
Yeah,
liquid drink. It could be
'cause
6 ounces and
that's
pop right
where
down the hatch.
That's where you get into trouble with fasting. Is like if you go too long, and not that we're damning it, because different things do work for different people, and there's different times to use different tools. And so, when you fast for a really long time, you get this burst of energy, and you think it's the energy coming from the stored body fat you're using, which you could argue that, but you could also argue that it's your adrenal glands kicking in, and your body's in a not a fight or flight state in the way you would normally think of it, but internally it might be. And so that's the burst of energy saying, hey, we do need a little bit of something, get to shelter, get some food, things of that nature. So it's useful when it's useful. But
Right,
if it's
right.
too long.
In the right situation, it makes lots of sense. If you're an early morning trainer, then certainly you should consider this. If you train later in the evenings, already fed, maybe it's not that important.
Yeah.
One of the other interesting points on the eating to complement hormonal optimization, for me at least, was the way in which she encouraged folks to eat their calories, even if they're after weight loss, in a strategic way around their training, whether their training is in the morning, whether their training is in the evening, and that you could essentially, Taryn, I'll let you kind of swing from this one, but load the barrel based on what your weight loss goals are, performance goals are.
Exactly. She specifically called it train for the task at hand, or excuse me, fuel for the task at hand. And because Andrew Huberman did a really good job of kind of zeroing in and made sure his audience wasn't hearing that thermodynamics is out the window. It ultimately does come down to calories in, calories out from a weight loss or weight gain standpoint. She was very specific on talking about how important it was from a stressor standpoint and letting the body properly perform and letting the body properly recover, of fueling around those tasks to optimize how you train, how you perform in the gym, and then how you start your recovery process, avoiding the extended cortisol level release, et cetera. So we're not throwing out that it ultimately just comes down to how much you eat versus how much you burn, because that's true. What she wanted to zero in on is let's get you optimized in your training window, fuel properly around that time, whether it be morning or evening, and specifically to exactly how she said it, fuel for the task at hand. So they all have their components. That's both of those concepts are important. That's the reason macro tracking works. But it needs to be done through her view around when you plan to train or perform your activity. So I think that brings two ideas together.
Yeah, and anything that's going to help you feel better while you're training is also going to make you want to train more.
Sure.
So it's like, oh, I felt great today. It's like, oh, I can't wait to train tomorrow. You kind of get that positive feedback loop, and it's like, all right, let's go. So if you're not doing that,
Yeah.
try it.
And move the performance needle. The harder you train and the more success you have in there, the better result it's going to have, the better stimulus it's going to provide, the more it's going to move you towards a little bit fitter or a little bit stronger of an individual. And that's what it's ultimately about. That's the reason we call it training, versus working out.
Right.
So
Yeah, to me, there's always a hierarchy of nutrition. Number one being the law of thermodynamics, which is what they're discussing: calories in versus calories expended and out. And of course, that's king in my opinion. That's your base. But your second layer could be, of course, the quality of foods that you're ingesting, and then third is what she's really harping on, and that's because she's again kind of delving a little more specific than what we normally talk about with general population ideas. She's talking about the timing. And so that's something we don't normally cover. And to be fair, that was actually one of the biggest surprising parts of the podcast for me, was the fact that you had a certain time window. I had heard that when I was younger, and then I heard it get debunked when I got older. And then hearing her talk about it specifically to women was very interesting. Mm-hmm. And that was always like a tertiary idea on the pyramid for me.
How long?
30 minutes for, was it ladies?
Within an hour.
Within an hour.
An hour for women.
Because it was 3 hours for guys,
up
right?
to 3 hours for guys.
Yeah.
And that's what, to Steve's point, that's what she was explaining. She said the science has seemed like it shifted because the science was always zeroing in on males. Yeah. And obviously a 3 hour window for males almost makes it seem like consuming protein or carbohydrate post-workout isn't necessary, because that's a pretty big window. You're obviously going to eat. And therefore you won't see much of a change. But for women, which the studies weren't specific to until now, it's very important to consume those macros, the protein and the carbohydrate post-workout.
Jay, I know you made a note. How much is it?
Yeah,
so post-workout, females want within 1 hour 40 to 60 grams of protein, which is leucine-based protein. So that is, we always like, females in the gym have a harder time eating protein. So if you can get some sort of supplement, some sort of whey powder or something like that, that is a leucine-based protein, please do that. That's one of the hard things. And then also they need about 30 grams of carbohydrates-ish as well to help restore those glycogen stores that'll be in your muscle as well. So it's really interesting because guys, Gail and I can go work out, and Terry and Steve, we can go work out. It's like, as long as we get in the next 3 hours, we're good. Women, to avoid endocrine disruption, need it within that 1 hour period, which Steve was talking about. We've all talked about hormone response. So we need women eat fast afterwards.
Also interesting, you say endocrine disruption. She mentioned the caloric difference per pound of lean body mass that men need versus women.
Yes. Psycho.
You want to let that one out of the box?
So basically, I think this is all based on lean body mass, right?
Right, lean body mass.
So take your lean body mass, and basically men need 15 calories per kilogram of fat-free mass. So you're leanest that you can be. You're walking around, your abs have abs. Women, you need 30 calories per kilogram of fat-free mass. I think Robin and I did it, and mine was like 1,800 or 1,900 calories before I get endocrine disruption, and hers was right around the same thing, which is wild. It's absolutely wild. You can do that math. We can put it on the screen if we need, but women, you got to eat more to avoid hormonal problems, like she went in like PCOS and all that stuff. Mm-hmm. It's like you need to take care of yourself. If you're starving yourself, you're going to have some problems.
Which it's counterintuitive to the direction women normally go.
Yep.
I don't want to speak for women necessarily, but I'd like to assume that it's most of the time just, crash the calories down, and that's going to equal, that's going to equal, weight loss success. And it might, and it will, to a degree, but not in the healthiest way, and probably not in the way that optimizes you and your performance and the way you feel, and how long you can hold on to those themes versus riding this wave up and down and up and down. So, shout out Kelly. We always make sure that she does a good job. I shouldn't say we. Justin might be on to her more than me, but does a really good job of properly
Kelly.
Fueling.
Galen will not make fun of you this podcast. Okay?
Team Logan. No, kidding.
Properly fueling. She'll even tell you, she can feel it. We can tell, when we work out alongside her, if she's not properly fueled. And her numbers to some of you, and seeing how lean she is, would probably be surprising to see how much she needs to eat to perform properly and to maintain the lean mass that she has.
Yeah, take about 5 seconds to guess how many calories per day Kelly eats. 3, 2, 1, 2,400, and we're trying to get her to eat more. Okay, she's 140 pounds. She's lean, and absolutely crush me in every single workout unless it's deadlifting. Like, honestly, but she's right there. So.
I heard deadlift's
She got
impressive
me.
too.
But yeah, Kelly, kudos
Back,
to you.
Kelly. You can continue hating me. The word's out.
Logan on the other hand is way better. But kudos to Kelly for eating that, because that would be, she's getting her stuff. Like,
Sure.
she's getting her calories in to where she doesn't feel terrible, and fueling her body to where she can push herself the way she does. She also sauna and cold plunges every day.
Hey, by the way, I do want to add one more thing, and I hope this doesn't tilt anybody on, overall, I guess, off the subject completely. But if you are, when you get through training, you do have that open window that we just discussed. But there's a reason we didn't really mention fat. Fat is very important when it comes to your hormones. But in that particular window, you've opened up those glycogen stores. You've broken down those muscle fibers. This sounds kind of, I don't know if most of you have ever heard this before, but normally you want to get the protein and carbs in at that time and no fat, because the fat will slow down the absorption and building back of that glycogen and those muscle fibers. So that's something I did want to touch on real quick, was the fact that you do want protein, you do want carbs, but you want to keep very low fat, if any at all. And so that hopefully will kind of sew up the whole time window we're talking about.
Cool. So eat plenty.
Yeah.
And hopefully you took a little bit away from that.
And if you need help with that, guys, let us know. We can do some math for you. We can get you set up. We do nutritional guidance, I would say. We're not dietitians or anything like that, but we can kind of point you in the right direction, whether it be via app or some way like that. But we can help you out.
Cool. Well, one thing too we can cover, and it's obviously something we're firm believers in. That's the reason we installed one in our facility. She brings up the importance for the use of heat exposure, intentional heat exposure for women as well. None of that to me was super revolutionary. It was stuff that we knew. We've talked to you guys as members about it, as folks that utilize the sauna or ask questions about the sauna about it. But we can hit on it again. I think it's important. And she just explains what the intentional sauna use post-workout is doing. Another B back to visit Galen. They're all over us today.
He's a sweetie.
So we can dig into that. She just explains the same protocol that we recommend to you guys.
It's one of those things we understood. We didn't know why, right?
Yeah.
We knew it was good. It mimicked the effect of exercise, but the longer we sit with the information, the more it sinks in as true, and we have more justification for the behavior that we maybe didn't justify originally.
Yeah.
And Huberman even coins it the Sims protocol.
Yeah.
I like that.
I love it. If you have a protocol named after you via Andrew Huberman,
You made it.
You've arrived.
Yep.
Yeah. What is that?
Sims protocol. Minimum of 30 minutes, but not over.
Yep.
She was very specific to say not over. He brought her into the window.
So maximum of 30.
Yeah.
That's probably a better way to put it. Yeah, maximum. Not minimum.
Sorry, I
Scratch
was
that.
like,
Hold on. Where's the record? Maximum of 30 minutes of sauna time. He brought her back to the temperature, which is where we've understood it to be. Traditional sauna, number one.
Yeah, no
to
infrared,
achieve,
right?
to achieve those those deep temperatures, 185 to 210 is that temperature window, which is what we achieve in our Bristol location sauna all day, every day. What am I missing?
What did she mention about the water intake?
and the reason,
yeah.
don't.
Yeah, slow hydration during it, because you're trying to trigger mild dehydration during that process. Yeah, so don't go in there. I'm guilty of it and didn't know it until recently. I would take a cold water in with me and just go to town on it versus sitting and kind of suffering through the actual.
Speaking of suffering through the heat, I thought it was kind of interesting. They talked about putting a towel on your head to insulate your brain.
Yeah.
I was like, okay.
There's a lot of people do that.
You got a hot head in there?
Fun
put the
fact.
towel-
It's not to make it hotter, though.
It's to make it
Correct.
feel
Right,
better.
yeah. Which
Yeah.
was interesting to me. I always thought it was like, how can I make this hotter? I'd cook my brain. But
Yeah.
it's to protect it.
Call back on a podcast we went over, or at least the podcast host. It's funny that we bring this up. They mentioned towel, drape it over your head, leaning kind of forward, and it also helped to keep it from feeling too hot when breathing. But Tucker Carlson, which is who we reviewed a podcast through last episode, mentioned wearing like a sauna cap, and my father, shout out David Hayden if you're listening, listened to that episode and bought me like a wool, like Viking looking sauna. I'm sorry, Dad, I have not worn that yet. I do still have it.
He wears it while he mows.
He
He
actually
loves
bought 2 of them, but it is literally wool. It pulls down kind of over the ear and has Viking horns.
That's awesome.
But it's to do the exact same thing.
If you don't want to wear it, I'll wear it.
Okay. Insulate
job,
the heat
Dad.
out versus letting the head feel hotter. But yeah, that was interesting too.
Yeah, and then she mentioned what the viscosity of the blood flow as well while you're in the sauna. I thought she got kind of a little. I liked it anyway. She got nerdy about it, and so
It prompts your body to create more blood.
Right.
correct.
Which is almost like blood doping
Blood
in
doping.
EPO
Yeah,
cycles.
EPO, exactly.
Or almost mimic elevation training. So I thought that was interesting as well. She said she would prepare for Utah by extra sauna efforts because she lives at sea level in New Zealand. But she would have plans to travel to Utah and would spend a week and a half doing extra Sims protocol, as it were.
Yeah.
To prepare for elevation, because she says she's one of those people, if she has a single drink at elevation, she's just disoriented for multiple hours. I think that's what she
That's
said. Right?
interesting. Yeah. Well, and Andrew Huberman said the same.
Yeah. Oh, maybe it was him. Okay.
She also recommended Huberman recommended some sort of electrolyte drink post workout as well. So that's what they were kind of sipping on, I think. So it was workout, we'll say element, since we love it.
we know a guy.
In case you didn't know, he's a salt
He's a
dealer.
salt dealer.
See me.
But then the 30 minutes of that, like as Taryn said, she said, do not go over that.
Yeah. No
I don't know
more.
who could stay for 30 minutes at 200.
So you look at some of the most cardio-based people in our gym, 2 that stick to mind. One, Kelly. Every single day
Straight?
she's sauna. Well, I don't think she does that long.
Okay.
But and Michael are diehard sauna people, and their long aerobic bases are ridiculous. Like it helps a ton.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
So utilize the sauna.
Yep. She also mentioned a track stack, trying to get perked up for a workout that I thought was really interesting,
Interesting,
like a
yeah.
pre-workout instead of taking Jack 3D or something like that before. 200 milligrams of caffeine,
Throwback.
aspirin, which basically thins the blood, gives you a little bit better blood flow, and beta-alanine, which gives you the itchies.
Oof.
Yeah.
That's basically a performance enhancer, so it helps a lot.
Tingle
Creepy
face.
crawlies.
Yeah, tingle face.
Yeah. And it passes water restrictions, which
Yeah,
is the
Right.
World
Which
Health
is why it's the
Organization.
track. What did you call it? Track stack?
Track stack.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's what she's recommended to performance athletes. And that also comes back to, obviously, she's viewing the workout session as an effort to move the needle a tiny bit more, to respond to that stimulus, to become that tiny bit fitter that day, so that obviously you continue slowly ratcheting up. And sometimes people have a hard time pushing further into it to be able to grow those concepts. And she said that was a way that she saw folks be able to get into the next layer, peel the onion one more layer back to get a little bit more fit or fast or explosive or whatever sport you're actually pertaining to.
I love the fact that she covered creatine.
Yeah.
And that women should be on creatine. I think men, women, children, everybody should be on creatine. It's the most researched product that there is, even more than the protein shakes that you down at the gas station and you don't think anything about. And so she mentioned Creapure, which is a German form, which I've read about when I was younger. But a good creatine, 3 to 5 grams a day, I believe is what she recommended for women, which is five for guys would be good too. That's about what I take.
That's the standard
MED, yeah.
recommendation. Yep.
For what it's worth, Trista watched this with me and started taking creatine.
Yeah.
After that was her largest takeaway was creatine. And ironically, what we had already purchased was Momentous brand, and it was the Creapure, but she noticed cramping from taking too much to start. So she started at 5 and had to dial it down to 3.
Back.
And by cramping, I mean stomach cramping.
Which is exactly what they talked about on the podcast. That there was some.
Even with the Creapure is what,
Okay.
which is the
Yeah.
takeaway for me. I thought that was interesting.
Drink a lot of water, I would say, when you take creatine would help quite a bit. And you're getting attacked over there, huh?
They're also talking about, like, I don't know if you call it microdosing, but like maybe having grams spread out through 5 times a day to minimize that stomach
If
discomfort.
it bothers you.
By the way, if you're one of those people who freak out about your kidneys, obviously if you have kidney damage or trouble, then be very careful taking something like that. But for most people, it's pretty harmless and it's only going to help. It helps with your ATP production, which is what you're using as you're doing any sort of physical training at all. And then there's a ton of not only physical benefits but mental benefits as well that come with creatine. So I would highly encourage, if hopefully you're gathering a lot out of this podcast and that one, but if you're gathering anything in particular, I think creatine would be a
Shared
great starting
a
point.
link in the brief a few weeks ago that was a study about the creatine's insulative protective mechanism post a bad night of sleep. So it would allow you to perform better than you would have otherwise mentally. Your mental acuity would have been sharpened even with less than ideal amounts of sleep.
Neat.
Yeah. So if you didn't see it, it's probably in early September. It was in a link's worth
I'll
a
post the
look.
link below.
Link's worth a look.
Cool.
We'll do a recap, because we're almost an hour.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sure. Maybe it's time. Maybe we've taken you deep enough into the water to do a recap and bring this thing to a close. So we can kind of riff on just the overall themes or the general themes. I know Jay can probably run down through some. We began by talking about just different types of training protocols for women in different stages of life. So you want to do that one again real quick?
Yeah. Biggest thing I'll say is lift heavy.
Lift heavy.
Lift heavy. Don't come in and on our lifting days and set it as a day where you're going to treat it as a recovery day. Hit those weights hard as long as you can move safely and your mechanics are sound. But hit those weights hard. Then you need interval training 2 to 3 times a week, which we do. Sprint training. We're going to start adding some more of that back in, even though we do some as well. I said do. Pay attention to those RPEs that we post.
Yeah.
When you get older, you want to not go to failure. As you're a little bit younger, 20 to 30-year-olds, yes, you can go to a little bit failure a little bit more. That'll increase hypertrophy. As we get older, we want to train that nervous system to be able to carry our loads. It'll protect against fall damage. It'll keep your mind sharp and young and just let you live a healthier, longer life.
Make sure you're fueling properly. Give it a
Yep.
shot. Consider if you're early morning training, consuming those quality protein sources and a bit of carbohydrate, or at very least, fuel for the task at hand. Make sure you are properly eating around your workout times. You can still be in a caloric deficit if that's your approach. Do so responsibly based on when you plan on working out.
Yes, Scott. Girls, ladies, females, whatever, eat more protein. Eat more protein. At least 1 gram of protein per pound of lean body mass. You need that.
Hey, by the way, I want to add one more thing. With the protein and the lifting weights, you will not get bulky. I repeat, you will not get bulky. If your mom and dad were bulky, you will be bulky, but that's just genetics, okay? You'll never look like the women on the CrossFit Games, even
What did
if
the
you try.
woman say to Arnold when she was talking to him about working out? She said, I don't want to look like you. And he said, don't worry, you won't.
That's right.
Exactly.
You can't. It's not that easy.
That's
If
right.
it were that easy, there'd be more than one Arnold.
Just so you know,
Schwarzenegger
ladies,
around,
Yeah.
it's genetics, and sometimes it's a little more supplementation than we're going to cover on this
We would
podcast.
recommend.
So we got the 1 gram of protein per pound of lean body mass, and then women need 30 calories total per 30 calories per kilogram of lean body mass. So a little bit of conversion we can do there. If you need help with that, please let us know. We'll talk you through it. But eat immediately after working out. Within 1 hour, you need to have some sort of protein and carbohydrate to help those muscles repair and keep you out of that fight or flight state. Get a little bit of hormonal disruption. What else?
Consider using the sauna if you don't already.
Yes. Up to 30 minutes, 185 degrees to 210 degrees. It'll help improve mental acuity, keep your cardio base high. It's basically like blood doping, as G would say.
You have more blood.
Yeah, more blood, which
Makes you more appetizing to a vampire.
I was going to say, try a little bit of creatine. Also, they did mention vitamin D, 5,000 IUs, I believe is what she mentioned. So that'll help out as well. So, again, if you're not getting out in the sun, getting enough sun exposure, you might want to try a little bit of vitamin D supplementation. But that's all I was going to add there, just a little bit of supplements.
Yep. And it's almost time to take that daily if you aren't already. The sun's starting to set sooner.
We're
and
on
once
the
we get
wrong
out-
side of the
yeah.
equinox
Yep.
right now.
Yep. And we're not getting out in it as much.
sleep a lot.
Sleep a lot, yeah.
Sleep a lot. She was talking about, Andrew Huberman was talking about, what do you recommend for types of carbohydrates post-workout? And she says that some people are ultra-processed, and she recommends that people stick to whole foods if they can do that. So old CrossFit, eat meats and vegetables, nuts, seeds, some fruit, little starch, no sugar. So if you can stick to that, you're going to be healthy.
Cool. Well, hopefully that was a good bit of information for you and you digested some of that. I think it's probably worth saying as well, there were plenty of topics that were covered on the podcast that might intrigue you even more. digging a lot deeper into some of the hormonal sides of things and some specifics in the world of you ladies that we probably ought not touch necessarily.
Untouchable.
Yeah, because we're not experienced in those. So if you would like to further hear them expand on some of those ideas, we can link the actual podcast into ours. And they definitely take a pretty good dive on some information that could definitely help.
We've
world.
sent this podcast out to many of the girls. So, like, if you want to, Robin was going to come out here and do it, but it's not really enough to cover in what we have on time here. Just take a little bit longer. So, but if you want to ask her anything, ask Lou, Trista if they listen to it, any of the other girls in the gym. It's pretty interesting. Or just listen to yourself.
Katya listened to it and was providing positive feedback too, so you could always probe her.
It's very eye opening. It's very neat.
She's real long-winded, like me.
All right, cool. Well, if you've made it this far, thank you so much. As always, again, hopefully the audio is a lot better for you. Give us some feedback. Give us a comment. Share this. Like it. Subscribe to our channel. That sounds very formal. If you're interested in sponsoring our podcast, let us know. We'll put, I don't know, a banner of your business in front of us or something. We'll get creative. But nonetheless, any final words, fellas?
Dad advice, Steve.
Creatine. Oh, no.
Hey, creatine.
Dad advice, is that what you said?
Yeah, Grand Thumb, he's a YouTuber. He always has he's like dad advice, or if he has a girl, he's like mom advice.
Ooh.
Got anything, Steve?
Oh. Train and eat nutritionally as if someone were watching you.
As if your kid were watching.
As if your kid were watching you.
There we go.
Someone is watching you. That will be true. Someone will be watching.
No doubt.
That is really
Well,
cool.
we'll end it on that. Thanks, guys. We'll see you back soon.
Bye-bye.